You're conscious, right now. But what is that really? Is it something you have, or is it something you are? For centuries, this has been one of the biggest mysteries for humanity. So today, we're going to dive in and explore three really fascinating models that try to explain the very nature of our reality.
It all really boils down to this one, simple-sounding question. What's the difference between a pile of atoms that makes up a rock and the pile of atoms that makes up, well, you? What's that spark that animates the inanimate?
Okay, so our first model, let's call it the thesis, suggests that consciousness is a totally separate force. It's like this external spark that comes in and gives life to matter that would otherwise just be inert.
So here's the deal. On one side, you've just got simple, inanimate matter, the basic building blocks of the universe. And on the other, you have this mysterious, animating force. In this view, matter is really just a tool, kind of like a computer. And it's this conscious force that arranges it all and runs programs through it.
And this is a really powerful analogy, one that's ancient. This idea of a separate breath of life. The whole concept here is that consciousness isn't a property of the body. It's something that actually enters the body, giving it life and purpose.
But, and this is key, it's temporary. When that animating spark leaves, when you cut the electricity, the matter just goes back to being inert. The hardware is still there, for sure, but the operator is gone.
But what if that's completely wrong? The counterargument, the antithesis, paints a totally different picture. What if awareness isn't some separate force at all, but an inherent property of everything in the universe?
This brings us to what we can call the accumulation model. Get this, the idea is that every single thing, even a rock, has tiny little micrograms of awareness. Think of it like mercury in fish, right? One tiny fish won't hurt you, but as you go up the food chain, that mercury accumulates. In the same way, awareness can build up in more complex things.
And you can see how this works on a spectrum. A rock might have a really low degree of awareness, a tree could have more, and a human, with our incredibly complex biology, has a really high concentration. So it's not like a switch that's just on or off, it's more like a gradient.
This phrase, spirit molecules, I think just perfectly captures the idea. As matter gets organized into more and more complex forms, these little units of awareness just compound, and eventually they reach a threshold that we recognize as life, as consciousness.
Okay, so we've got two competing ideas on the table. Consciousness as a separate ghost, or consciousness as this universal ocean. But if everything is aware, well, we run into a pretty major philosophical problem.
And this leads to a huge question. Our everyday experience tells us there's a fundamental, profound difference between a rock and a cat. If everything is aware, why on earth do we make these distinctions?
The conflict is just so clear. On one hand, you have this beautiful philosophical idea that everything is one, everything is aware. But on the other hand, you have practical, everyday reality. We just know a cat's experience is different from a block of woods. If we say they're both aware, the word starts to lose all its meaning.
So how do we solve this? Well, a synthesis of both models gives us a really powerful new way of thinking about it. What if reality is a kind of operating system? This is the hardware/software model. In this view, the oneness of the universe, that universal awareness we were just talking about, is the fundamental hardware. It's the base layer of everything. But individual consciousnesses, like you and me, we're like unique software programs running on top of that hardware.
So the underlying fabric of reality, the ground of being, if you will, that's the universal hardware. It's the potential for everything.
And our individual experiences, being a human or a cat or even a tree, that's the software. These are the interesting, complex applications that make the hardware useful and give it expression. The hardware is the same for everybody, but the programs can be wildly different. So, where does self-awareness fit into all this? Well, it's a special kind of program. It's a recursive one. A program that can actually look back and reference itself. This might be what separates human-level consciousness from simpler forms. The software itself becomes aware that it is software. Just think about a repeating pattern we see all over nature. You have simple units like cells, and they combine to form more complex systems, tissues. And then those tissues combine to form an even more complex functional whole, like an organ. It's this beautiful hierarchy of complexity.
Now, check this out. The exact same pattern exists in the totally abstract world of software. Simple atomic elements, like buttons, combine to create components, like cards. which then get assembled into a fully functional system, like a web page. This as above, so below principle suggests a really fundamental structure to how reality organizes itself, both physically and abstractly. It's pretty cool.
So where does this leave us? Well, this synthesis, this final model, resolves the big conflict by introducing one last crucial idea: context.
It all comes down to this idea of contextual awareness. The idea is that everything is aware, but only in a way that's relevant to its function, to its purpose. A block's beingness is just its doingness of being a block. A cell's whole purpose is just to be a cell. And this elegant idea allows for both a unified, one universe and the meaningful, profound distinctions we see and experience every single day.
So this brings it all right back to you. If your consciousness is a unique program running on the hardware of the universe, and it has that special ability to be self-aware, what program are you running? What's its purpose? What's its function? And what are you creating with it?